Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, consumed by a single haunting thought? Why am I so hard to love? It's a feeling that can strike anyone, regardless of how successful, attractive, or outwardly confident they may seem. This belief, that we are unlovable, is one of the most painful narratives we can carry. It feels like an invisible weight on our shoulders, dragging us down in every interaction, every relationship, and every opportunity for connection. But where does this feeling come from? Why is it so pervasive? And most importantly, is there a way to overcome it? In today's video, we're diving deep into the inner landscape of our minds, using the ancient wisdom of Stoic philosophy as our guide. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, lived in a time very different from our own, yet they grappled with the same human fears and insecurities we face today. Their teachings offer profound insights into how we can reshape our perceptions and find the strength to confront our deepest fears. If this kind of content resonates with you, please give the video a like to help share these valuable insights with others. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. 1. Chronic self-criticism. Chronic self-criticism is a deeply ingrained habit where a person constantly judges themselves harshly. This inner critic is relentless, finding flaws in everything we do, from our appearance to our interactions. Over time, this narrative creates a belief that we are inherently flawed and therefore unworthy of love. Stoicism teaches us to be our own guide rather than our own critic. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." If we believe that we are fundamentally flawed, we close ourselves off from learning and self-improvement. The Stoic practice of self-assessment involves looking at our actions with honesty, but also with compassion, acknowledging our mistakes without condemning our entire being. Emma is a 35-year-old marketing manager who seems to have it all: a stable career, supportive friends, and a loving family. Yet, beneath this surface, Emma's inner critic never seems to rest. After every meeting at work, she finds herself replaying her words, agonizing over every sentence. "Did I sound stupid when I suggested that idea?" she thinks. Even when she receives praise from her colleagues, she dismisses it internally, believing they're just being polite. Outside of work, this pattern continues. When she's out with friends, a passing comment about her outfit can linger in her mind for days, spiraling into thoughts like, "I'm not attractive enough, I'm just an embarrassment." Her chronic self-criticism extends into her relationships, making her feel unworthy of affection. Whenever her partner compliments her, she responds with a forced smile, internally thinking, "They must be saying this because they feel sorry for me." Emma's constant self-judgment has become so ingrained that she can't imagine a day without this inner dialogue. It leads her to believe she's inherently flawed, making it hard for her to accept love from others because she doesn't believe she deserves it. Practice the two-part reflection. At the end of each day, write down one thing you did well and one area where you could improve. For the area of improvement, write down what you learned from it without passing judgment on yourself. This exercise helps balance self-assessment with self-compassion, reducing chronic self-criticism over time. Seneca advised us to focus on what is within our control. He would end each day with a reflective practice called examination of conscience. Implement this by reflecting on your inner critic's voice. Ask yourself, is this criticism useful for my growth, or is it simply a habit of self-punishment? Separate constructive feedback from unnecessary self-judgment. 2. Perceived unworthiness. Perceived unworthiness is the belief that we are fundamentally undeserving of love and kindness. This belief often arises from early life experiences, such as emotional neglect, lack of validation, or even verbal abuse. When love is conditional in our formative years, we internalize the idea that we must meet certain criteria to be lovable. Marcus Aurelius reminds us in Meditations, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." The Stoic approach is to understand that our thoughts about unworthiness are not facts but interpretations influenced by past conditioning. By changing our thoughts, we can change our perception of ourselves. Carlos, a 28-year-old software engineer, grew up in a family where love was rarely expressed unless tied to achievements. His parents often said, "We're proud of you," only when he brought home top grades or excelled in sports. As an adult, this conditioning has left Carlos feeling that he must constantly prove his worth to earn love and acceptance. He works long hours, takes on extra projects, and strives for perfection in everything he does, hoping to receive validation from his peers. In his romantic life, Carlos finds it hard to believe that his partner loves him for who he is. When his partner expresses affection, Carlos's immediate thought is, "They don't really know me. If they knew how imperfect I truly am, they wouldn't stay." He worries that the love he receives is based on a facade of success rather than his true self. This perceived unworthiness creates a barrier, preventing him from fully opening up and connecting with others on a deeper level. The more he achieves, the higher he sets the bar for himself, never feeling satisfied or worthy. He's trapped in a cycle where his worthiness of love is tied to his productivity, leaving him feeling unlovable when he isn't constantly achieving. Practice self-affirmation of worth. Each morning, stand in front of a mirror and say out loud 3 things that make you inherently valuable, unrelated to your achievements or actions. For example, I am worthy of love because I am kind, because I am compassionate, because I strive to be my best self. This helps reframe your sense of worth from external validation to internal acknowledgement. Use amor fati, the Stoic love of fate. Embrace your life experiences as essential parts of your journey. Instead of viewing your past as evidence of your unworthiness, see it as a foundation that has shaped your capacity for resilience and growth. Accepting your past with compassion is the first step toward feeling deserving of love. 3. Lack of self-compassion. A lack of self-compassion is the inability to be kind and understanding toward oneself. This trait manifests in a harsh inner dialogue where every mistake is met with severe self-judgment. Without self-compassion, we struggle to forgive ourselves for past mistakes, reinforcing the belief that we are unworthy of love. Epictetus said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them." When we lack self-compassion, we view our mistakes as reflections of our worth rather than as opportunities for learning. Stoicism teaches us that failure is not a condemnation of our character, but a chance to practice humility and improve. Nina is a 40-year-old high school teacher who has dedicated her life to helping her students. She's known for her kindness and patience, always willing to stay after school to tutor those who need extra help. However, when it comes to herself, Nina is unforgiving. If she makes a mistake, whether it's something small like forgetting to reply to an email or something bigger like struggling with a lesson plan, she berates herself harshly. After a recent breakup, Nina's inner dialogue became even more critical. She blames herself entirely, thinking, "If only I had been more understanding, he wouldn't have left." Her lack of self-compassion keeps her locked in a cycle of self-blame, making it hard for her to move forward. Even when her friends try to reassure her, she dismisses their words, feeling that they don't see the real her who made all these mistakes. This constant self-judgment prevents Nina from seeing her positive qualities, reinforcing her belief that she is unworthy of love. It's as if she set an impossibly high standard for herself, one she could never meet, and this lack of self-kindness convinces her that she's fundamentally flawed. Try the compassionate letter. Write a letter to yourself from the perspective of a compassionate friend. Include everything you would say to a loved one in your situation. Read this letter whenever you feel overwhelmed by self-criticism to remind yourself of the importance of self-kindness. Marcus Aurelius often practiced viewing from above to gain perspective on his problems. Apply this by imagining you are a friend giving yourself advice. Would you be as harsh to a friend as you are to yourself? This exercise helps develop self-compassion by shifting the perspective from criticism to support. 4. Imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the feeling that one is a fraud and that any success or love received is based on deception. People with this trait believe they have somehow tricked others into thinking they are better or more capable than they actually are. This constant fear of being found out reinforces the belief that they are unlovable or unworthy of genuine affection. Seneca wrote, "As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." The Stoic focus is on the quality of our actions and intentions rather than how others perceive us. Imposter syndrome is rooted in the fear of judgment, but Stoicism teaches us to focus on our own virtues and the quality of our efforts rather than external validation. David, a 32-year-old entrepreneur, recently received recognition for his startup's rapid growth. On the outside, he seems to be the epitome of success. He's featured in business magazines, invited to speak at conferences, and praised by his peers. But every time he steps on stage or receives an award, he feels a tightening in his chest, thinking, "I don't deserve this. I just got lucky. If they knew the real me, they'd see I'm a fraud." Despite years of hard work, David attributes his success to factors outside of his control: good timing, the support of his team, or sheer luck. He rarely credits himself for his dedication and perseverance. When clients praise his work, he feels a pang of anxiety, convinced that they're mistaken about his abilities. This imposter syndrome seeps into his personal life too. In relationships, he fears that his partner loves an illusion of who he is, not the real David with his insecurities and flaws. He's constantly waiting for the day when they will see through the mask he believes he's wearing and decide he's not good enough. This fear of being found out prevents him from accepting love freely, as he doesn't believe he truly deserves it. Practice reality check reflection. At the end of each week, write down 3 accomplishments and identify the specific skills or qualities you used to achieve them. Reflect on how your efforts contributed to these outcomes, countering the narrative of imposter syndrome. Apply the dichotomy of control by Epictetus. Focus on what is within your control, your actions, decisions, and efforts. Accept that how others perceive you is beyond your control. By grounding yourself in your own effort and integrity, you can begin to dissolve the fears associated with imposter syndrome. 5. Fear of rejection. Fear of rejection is a deep-rooted anxiety about being dismissed or abandoned by others. It often stems from past experiences where love or acceptance was withheld, making the individual hypersensitive to signs of disapproval. This fear creates a cycle where the person anticipates rejection, leading them to withdraw or behave in ways that ironically increase the likelihood of rejection, reinforcing the belief that they are unlovable. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Stoicism emphasizes that while we cannot control whether others accept or reject us, we can control our response. The Stoics would argue that our worth is not diminished by someone else's decision to reject us. Instead, it is defined by our own actions and character. Sophie is a 25-year-old graphic designer who dreams of finding a partner with whom she can share her life. However, the mere thought of putting herself out there terrifies her. She avoids dating apps, turns down invitations to social gatherings, and convinces herself she's better off alone. The fear of hearing someone say, "You're not what I'm looking for," is paralyzing for her. In her last relationship, her partner ended things abruptly, saying they weren't ready for a commitment. Sophie internalized this as a reflection of her worth, thinking, "I'm not enough. There must be something wrong with me." Since then, she's been trapped in a cycle of self-protection, choosing solitude over the risk of rejection. Even when a colleague showed interest in her recently, Sophie brushed it off, assuming it was just a joke or pity. Her fear of rejection has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. By avoiding any situation where she could potentially face rejection, she reinforces her belief that she is unlovable. Practice exposure therapy. Start by intentionally putting yourself in low-stakes situations where there is a possibility of minor rejection. For example, ask a stranger for a small favor, like directions or an opinion on a product. Over time, this helps desensitize you to the fear of rejection and builds resilience, showing you that rejection is a normal part of life and not a reflection of your worth. Use the Stoic exercise of premeditatio malorum, premeditation of evils. Visualize a scenario where you experience rejection. Instead of focusing on the emotional pain, imagine how you would respond calmly and constructively. This practice helps you prepare mentally, reducing the fear and emotional impact of potential rejection. 6. Negative self-talk. Negative self-talk involves a harsh inner dialogue where a person frequently belittles or criticizes themselves. This internal narrative often repeats phrases like, "I'm not good enough," or "No one would want to be with someone like me." Over time, this constant reinforcement of negative beliefs makes the idea of being unlovable feel like an undeniable truth. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of our inner dialogue in shaping our reality, stating, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If we constantly feed our minds with negative thoughts, we inevitably shape our perception of ourselves in a negative light. Stoicism teaches us to be vigilant gatekeepers of our thoughts, allowing only those that are constructive and aligned with our true values. Tom is a 30-year-old law student who has been struggling academically. Every time he gets a test result that isn't perfect, he hears a familiar voice in his head saying, "You're a failure. You'll never be a good lawyer." This self-talk isn't just limited to his studies, it spills into every aspect of his life. When he's with friends, he thinks, "They're only spending time with me because they feel sorry for me." Tom's negative self-talk has become so automatic that he barely notices it anymore, yet it colors every experience. When he looks in the mirror, he doesn't see his strengths or qualities. He sees a person who isn't good enough, who hasn't accomplished enough, and who isn't worthy of love. This constant self-criticism leads him to believe that anyone who shows him affection is either mistaken or will eventually realize he's not worth it. Implement cognitive reframing. When you catch yourself engaging in negative self-talk, challenge the thought by asking, "Is this true?" and "What evidence do I have to support this?" Replace the negative thought with a more balanced one. For example, instead of saying, "I'm a failure," try saying, "I didn't do as well as I wanted, but this is an opportunity to learn and improve." Practice the Stoic technique of self-distancing. When you notice negative self-talk, address yourself in the third person as if you were giving advice to a friend. For example, "Tom, you made a mistake, but that doesn't define your worth. Use this as a chance to grow." This technique helps you gain perspective and reduces the emotional intensity of the negative thoughts. 7. Attachment issues. Attachment issues, particularly those rooted in insecure attachment styles, can make a person feel unlovable. Those with an anxious attachment style may cling to partners, fearing abandonment, while those with an avoidant attachment style may push others away to protect themselves from potential hurt. These behaviors stem from a deep-seated belief that they are not truly lovable as they are, and thus they must either cling tightly or distance themselves to avoid the pain of rejection. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." In the context of attachment, bravery involves confronting our fears of abandonment or closeness and embracing vulnerability. Stoicism teaches us to face discomfort head-on and to act with courage in our relationships, understanding that true freedom comes from emotional resilience, not from avoiding pain. Laura, a 33-year-old nurse, has always struggled with relationships. As a child, her parents were inconsistent in their affection. One moment they were loving, and the next, distant. Now, as an adult, she finds herself clinging tightly to her partners, afraid they'll leave her just as her parents often did emotionally. When she doesn't hear back from her partner immediately, she spirals into a panic, thinking, "They're going to leave me. I'm not enough for them." On the flip side, when someone shows her consistent affection, Laura feels suffocated and begins to push them away, fearing that if they get too close, they'll see the real her and leave. This push-pull dynamic leaves her exhausted, reinforcing her belief that she's too difficult to love and that no one will ever stay. Practice grounding techniques. When you feel the urge to seek reassurance or push someone away, take a moment to ground yourself. Use deep breathing or a mindfulness exercise to bring yourself back to the present moment. Remind yourself that your feelings of fear are not necessarily reflective of reality. Apply the Stoic principle of accepting what is outside of your control. You cannot control another person's actions or feelings, but you can control your response. Focus on building your own sense of worth and security, independent of external validation. This practice helps reduce the anxiety and fear associated with attachment issues. 8. People-pleasing tendencies. People-pleasing is the act of trying to gain approval and acceptance by prioritizing others' needs over one's own. This behavior often stems from the belief that our true selves are not enough to be loved. By constantly seeking to please others, we inadvertently send the message that love must be earned, not given freely, which reinforces the belief that we are unlovable unless we meet others' expectations. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." People-pleasing is a form of self-enslavement where we become controlled by the opinions and desires of others. The Stoics would argue that true contentment comes from aligning our actions with our own values, not from seeking external validation. Mark, a 29-year-old project manager, has a habit of saying yes to everything. Whether it's taking on extra tasks at work or agreeing to plans he's not interested in, he's driven by a deep need to be liked. He fears that if he says no or sets a boundary, people will see him as selfish and stop caring about him. This pattern started in childhood, where he learned that love and approval were conditional, only given when he was helpful and agreeable. Now, in his adult life, this behavior continues. He constantly prioritizes others' needs over his own, even when it leaves him drained and unhappy. When people thank him, he feels a fleeting sense of worth, but it quickly dissipates, replaced by the lingering belief that if he stops pleasing others, they'll see his true self and leave. Practice setting boundaries. Start small by saying no to a request that you genuinely do not want to fulfill. When you decline, do so kindly but firmly. Reflect on how this feels and remind yourself that setting boundaries does not make you unlovable. It makes you authentic and respected. Apply the inner citadel concept from Marcus Aurelius. Visualize your core self as a fortress protected from external influences. When you feel the urge to people please, imagine yourself within this citadel, making decisions based on your own principles and values rather than external pressures. 9. History of trauma or abuse. Experiencing trauma or abuse, especially in formative years, can severely impact a person's self-worth. Whether the trauma was emotional, physical, or sexual, it often leaves the individual with the belief that they are damaged, broken, or unworthy of love. These experiences can create deep-seated feelings of shame and self-blame, reinforcing the narrative that they are unlovable because of what happened to them. Stoicism teaches us that while we cannot change the past, we can change our response to it. Epictetus, who was born a slave and endured significant physical abuse, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The Stoics believe that our true power lies in our ability to reinterpret our experiences, transforming our pain into a source of strength and wisdom. Rebecca, a 45-year-old accountant, survived an abusive marriage that lasted over a decade. Her ex-partner would frequently belittle her, telling her she was worthless and that no one else would ever love her. Even after leaving the marriage, these words echo in her mind. When a new partner shows her kindness, Rebecca finds herself doubting their sincerity. "They must want something from me," she thinks, "because who could love someone as broken as I am?" She often pulls away emotionally, afraid to be vulnerable. The trauma from her past has left deep scars, making her feel fundamentally damaged. Her belief that she's unlovable isn't just a thought, it's a narrative shaped by years of emotional abuse. Practice rewriting your narrative. Write a letter to yourself as the adult you are now, addressing your younger self during the time of the trauma. Offer comfort, validation, and understanding. Acknowledge the pain but also recognize the strength it took to survive. This exercise helps shift the narrative from being a victim of your past to being a resilient survivor who is worthy of love. Engage in the Stoic practice of resilience. Reflect on Marcus Aurelius' teaching, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." View your trauma not as a barrier, but as a catalyst for growth. Choose one aspect of your trauma that you feel still holds power over you, and make a plan to confront it, whether it's through therapy, journaling, or a healing practice. By facing the pain, you reclaim your power and begin to dissolve the belief of being unlovable. 10. Perceived lack of achievements. In a society that places immense value on success and external accomplishments, it's easy for individuals to tie their self-worth to what they have achieved. When a person feels they haven't accomplished enough, they may believe they are unworthy of love. This mindset leads to a constant need for validation through external achievements, creating a cycle where their self-worth and lovability are always conditional on their performance. Seneca wisely observed, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The Stoics emphasized inner virtue over external success. They taught that true worth is derived from our character, our courage, wisdom, and kindness, rather than our accolades. Focusing on external achievements as a measure of our value distracts us from cultivating our inner virtues, which are the true sources of a meaningful life. James, a 38-year-old artist, has struggled for years to make a name for himself in the competitive world of contemporary art. Despite creating beautiful pieces, he hasn't yet received the recognition he craves. He scrolls through social media, comparing himself to peers who have exhibited in prestigious galleries or won awards, thinking, they're successful because they're talented. I'm not where I should be, so I must not be good enough. This perceived lack of achievement seeps into his self-worth. He feels that until he reaches a certain level of success, he doesn't deserve love or admiration. When his partner praises his work, he brushes it off, thinking, they're just saying that because they love me, it doesn't count. His self-worth is so tied to external validation that he struggles to believe he's worthy of love just as he is. Try the gratitude inventory exercise. Each day, write down 3 things you are grateful for that are unrelated to your achievements. This could include qualities you appreciate about yourself, for example, compassion, resilience, or simple moments of joy, for example, a walk in the park, a meaningful conversation. This practice helps you shift focus from external success to the inherent value of everyday experiences and personal virtues. Implement the practice of memento mori, a Stoic reflection on mortality. As Marcus Aurelius noted, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Reflecting on the impermanence of life helps us detach from the pressure of achieving external success. It encourages us to focus on how we live each day, who we are as people, and the love we share with others, rather than on a tally of accomplishments. The feeling of being unlovable can be rooted in painful experiences and distorted self-perceptions. Whether it arises from a history of trauma, a lack of achievements, or other personal struggles, it is a belief shaped by our thoughts, which Stoicism teaches us to challenge and transform. The Stoics remind us that our worth is not dictated by our past, our achievements, or others' opinions, but by our inner virtues and our capacity for growth, compassion, and love. Epictetus advised, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If we desire to be loved, we must first cultivate a sense of self-worth and compassion from within. As we have explored through the lens of Stoic wisdom, the journey to overcoming the belief of being unlovable is not about changing who we are, but about changing how we see ourselves. It is about embracing our imperfections, recognizing our inherent value, and living in accordance with our true principles. Let us carry forward the Stoic belief that every obstacle is an opportunity. The belief of being unlovable is a challenge, but it is also a powerful teacher. By applying the insights of Stoic philosophy, we can transform this belief, step by step, into a foundation of self-acceptance, inner peace, and the understanding that we are indeed deserving of love. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look.